And I remember laying there thinking, it can't get any worse than this. What if I don't wake up? My children are here with me. What if I don't wake up?
Jacob Edward Gilbert, better known as Jake Gilbert, was born on March 20th, 1980 in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and raised in the small town of Yukon to Brad and Roseanne Gilbert. He is the middle child of two older sisters and one younger brother. As a child, Jake was very adventurous, never afraid to try out new things. As he continued to mature, Jake found out that life had a lot of unexpected twists and turns. Today, you're in for a treat as we sit down with Jake to have a heart-to-heart conversation on how adventurous his life would be in regards to healthy living and wellness, and what it means to keep moving when the adventure of life throws a curveball. Well, welcome, Jake, to my wonderful home. I thought this would be a good place to sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation with you today. It's a pleasure for you to be in my home for the first time. And I chose this particular spot because this is where I like to sit and read and write, and I love looking through the window and the sun shining coming in through all of my plants. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off by a quote that you wrote. I Facebook stalked you. I hope that's okay. and you said this. I can't believe this was 7 years ago. I was 93 pounds and not sure if I would make it. I just had my first open heart surgery and the amazing little LVAD installed while waiting for my transplant. More than half my life, I lived not healthy at all. There were a lot of drugs and bad decisions that led to this point in my life. And there is a lot of God, recovery, selflessness, honesty, understanding, and acceptance, even if I don't fully understand. It's not my business anymore to worry about God's plan for me. This life today isn't for myself. God is good all the time. And you wrote this October 21st, 2022, I believe. And this was now it'd be about 8.5 years ago. So take us back to why this particular message was very important to you.
This particular message that I was giving was very important, more for all of you than myself, because I finally understood what it was to be completely hopeless and helpless in life and not rely on myself to figure anything out. And I wanted to get the message out of hope, that even through the hardest of times, there is that hope that we can get from, I call them angels, people that God has placed in our lives, whether it's for a short period or a long period, to help us learn more about His will for us. And that game of life that we all trudge through, kind of like Monopoly, we all hoping to get to the next best spot so we can make more money and just feel some kind of acceptance and self-worth. I realized then that none of that mattered in life, and being selfless and of service to other people and watching their successes, even if it was for a moment, even if it was just to help them smile for a moment, that was what life was about.
And so during this time in your life, you were having a medical crisis during that time. So can you share some light on what that crisis was that you were having, and some of the things that you've learned as relates to this journey, because there's somebody out there today that's perhaps dealing with some level of crisis. And sometimes when we go through crisis in our life, sometimes we kind of feel as if we're the only one that's going through it. You know, depression or melancholy has a way of isolating us to a point that we feel that we're alone. But what was going on during that time in your life? And can you share with us what this medical crisis that you were experiencing?
So at that time, I was in end-stage heart failure.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 35.
35.
Yep. End-stage heart failure, 35 years old, young family, 4 kids. My youngest was, at the time that I wrote that, she was just about to turn 1 in October 15th of 2015. When I was coming into that, just after my first open heart surgery, where, as you said, they installed an LVAD, which was a mechanical pump to assist the function of my heart. Pretty much, it was a small pump that they inserted into the left side of my heart to assist the blood flow for my body before transplant.
And were you at home, or were you at work when you were having when you had your first heart attack, or when you had a heart attack? Where were you?
So that was
time?
That was Father's Day of 2015, June 21st, 2015, and I had a stroke first, and then after that, repeated cardiac episodes. I was given a 15% chance to survive 3 weeks after that first episode. And quitting is not in my nature. Being a statistic is not in my DNA. And all the doctor could tell myself and my father was there was nothing he could do, and he should go home and get my affairs in order, and they were going to send me home comfortably. In that moment, now a little backside on this, I've only been afraid of my father one time in my life. And I saw that very same look come across his face and watched his head and neck turn a shade of red, almost purple, that I recognized, and I feared for that doctor at that time, because he was just telling him that his son and his best friend was going to die and he needed to get his affairs in order. So he said, "Let me talk to you outside." They left the hospital room, and in walked the 2 most amazing cardiologists, most amazing people in my life still to this day, Dr. Susan Wachter and Dr. Doug Blank from the Idaho Heart Institute. And they said, "Stroke wasn't your problem, it's your heart, and we think we can save you. Is that okay?" And I kind of snickered and said, "What do I have to lose? The doctor previously just said I was dying. You guys say that you can save me. What do I have to lose?" And boy, was I surprised at all of the things that I was going to lose during this time of going through the heart failure and advanced therapies medication here in Idaho Falls, and then going and meeting the transplant team down in Salt Lake. I was not about ready to give up. I woke up every day. Some days didn't go to sleep because I was afraid I wasn't going to wake up, and my kids would wake up and find me passed away. And I didn't want that for them, so I fought every day to make sure that I was going to be the father that I promised my kids I could be. Fast forward to October of 2015, I was sent down to Salt Lake to Intermountain Medical Center in Murray, Utah, and I met with the transplant specialists down there.
So at this point, you were needing a heart transplant.
I was.
You were needing a new heart.
Yep, I was pretty far along, in end stage heart failure. And within 45 minutes of meeting two of the doctors down there, Dr. Budge and Dr. Rami, they came in and said that I was a perfect candidate for their program, meaning the LVAD program, that they would implant the LVAD to assist my body with heart function and blood function. And they would move into the transplant program. And I was just completely scared, just full of fear. And I remember looking at Dr. Budge, and she had these very small almond eyes. And I said, can I go back to the hotel and pack my stuff and think about it? And her eyes got very large. She looked at Dr. Rami.
Because you were critical. You were in a critical situation.
He smiled almost like a dumbfounded smile that I would ask that kind of question. And she looked at me and said, morally and legally, we cannot allow you to leave this hospital. If you leave, you will not make it an hour away to Ogden, and you will die on the side of the highway. We are admitting you right now. We have nurses outside. We have a room ready for you right now. Sorry about that. Okay. Probably a few times throughout this interview that emotions are going to... So I looked at my wife, Amanda, and said, what do you think? And she said, I will go pack up the hotel room and I will meet you back here. So I was admitted, went up to the 4th floor of the cardiac unit, of the heart and lung unit for Intermountain Medical Center, and met, I don't know how many doctors and how many LVAD coordinators and how many nurses. There had to have been at least 30 of different specialists. Okay, one specialist was for the electrical side of the heart. One specialist was he was an internal medicine doctor, and he wanted to make sure that my body was absorbing and producing correct hormones and absorbing correct nutrients. A team of specialists, my LVAD coordinators, they were there for the mechanical side of the LVAD to make sure that was functioning properly.
Now the LVAD. Can you explain what that is? Is it just an IV that they put in your arm? What is an LVAD?
So an LVAD was a mechanical pump, a little bit bigger than a silver dollar.
Okay.
And it was about 3 inches tall, and they cored a hole in the left side of my heart and installed that pump.
Okay.
And installed a bypass hose that went from that pump up to my aorta.
So it became like an artificial heart?
Yeah, in a sense, an artificial left side of the heart.
Okay.
I had a group of wires they called the drive line. I called it the extension cord, and it came out of my abdomen and hooked to a mechanical drive box that was operated by 2 14-volt batteries. So I was literally battery operated at this point.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know how to take it. I was very angry about it. I couldn't go home. I wasn't allowed to move back here to Idaho Falls. I had to stay there in Salt Lake within 30 to 45 minutes at extreme most of the hospital there for safety reasons. If something was to happen, if something was to go wrong, then I could be to the hospital very quick, and they could assist in caring for me and figure out what was going on.
Now, one thing that you mentioned in this message that you wrote over 8-9 years ago, you mentioned because of course the Idaho Falls Family YMCA, we specialize in youth development, healthy living, and so through this heart-to-heart conversation, our focus is healthy living. And so you mentioned about living an unhealthy life through drugs and bad decisions. And so do you account what happened, this medical crisis, this needing a transplant, due to those decisions that you made and the drugs that you made?
It was an absolute direct natural consequence of those decisions that I made in my younger years. There was some genetics. Heart problems do run on both sides of the family, as I came to learn. I thought it was just my father's side. And then finding out later on, after going through, the end-stage heart failure and the advanced therapies and the transplant, they did run on both sides. My mom was diagnosed with end-stage heart failure shortly after my transplant. Uncles on her side, her brother, heart problems, as well as my dad's side. My grandma on my father's side, she had heart disease and was down in Salt Lake in the late 80s for a couple of open heart procedures. My uncle, his oldest brother, is in heart failure. My cousin Scott is same thing, has heart issues.
Genetics and hereditary
Yep.
thing that you
So it was 50-50. I got it from genetics, and yes, as a direct natural consequence of the life that I lived and the choices that I made, I compounded those heart issues and turned it into needing to go down for advanced therapies and a heart transplant.
And how many years ago was this?
So I got my transplant July 7th of 2016. So yeah, coming on a few years now.
And you are still here.
Yes.
You're still here.
Coming on a few years, and the heart is amazing. It's an amazing, amazing little muscle. They don't pay me enough to really understand all of it, is what I say. I follow the recommendations of my doctors and follow some of the lifestyle choices and recommendations of people that have had transplants longer than I have. Some of my mentors, as I call them, those angels that God placed in my life. And I like to share that with other people coming into heart failure or needing advanced therapies or needing a transplant, or people not even needing a transplant, not even facing severe medical problems, just facing a serious opposition in life, whether it be loss of a job, loss of a loved one, battling addiction with food or drugs or something else, something that is just unhealthy in their life and they want to change.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's why we're here today, to help our audience, those who are watching this video, to know that regardless of what's going on in your life, you can recover and you can have and live a healthy life with the understanding of holding on and perhaps having a strong belief and support. I'm assuming you had a lot of support in your life, and the importance of having support in your life is very important. Now, you mentioned selflessness, honesty, and understanding. What did you mean by that?
So selflessness, the act of humility is doing something for somebody else without the expectation of anything in return. And I live by that. I lived my life very selfishly for quite a while, and I was very good at it. I was very good at being selfish and manipulative and getting what I wanted. I would befriend individuals just to benefit myself. If there was something that they had that I wanted or that I could use, then they were a part of my life for that short period. And going through this opposition, I realized that I had a lot of individuals in my life that taught me and displayed humility and humbleness and selflessness and honesty, even when it hurt my feelings, even when I allowed that to come in and I took it as a personal attack. It was honest, and that's exactly what I needed. They weren't trying to attack me personally. They were just trying to convey a message of honesty and humility, whether it be from God, whether it be a minister coming into my home to minister me on the words and the life of God, or good friends that dove in head first into a godly lifestyle and didn't allow the past to affect them and continue to make their future unhealthy. They were there. Those individuals that we used each other back and forth. We manipulated each other back and forth because that's what happens in that kind of lifestyle. A significant part of them weren't there. The ones that I'd known my whole life, they were. And they're still by my side today. They
awesome.
still support me today. Individuals that I've grown up with, that I've known my whole life. That we were heathenists together, yes. Now we are very responsible, honest, and productive adults and family members and fathers and husbands and members of our community.
So that brings to another question, because I believe that there's that perhaps how we are brought up or raised maybe have some inkling of how our lives are shaped today. So my question is, what is a favorite childhood memory that you can recall?
Boy, honestly, a lot of them. My childhood, my family was honestly very, very great. I was the wild one of the family. Definitely the one that made everybody want to pull their hair out because it was nonstop, just on the move with me. My parents were very, very good parents. My extended family was very, just very, very strong and supporting. I was that wild heathenist one of the black sheep of the family, as a lot of people will say in the family dynamic. I can't pick just one, honestly, because there are so many, whether it was, and my family is large. Like, we would get together at my grandparents' house on my father's side, and there would be 50, 60, 70 of us at one time for 4th of July at my grandparents', Christmases, Thanksgivings, 40 grandkids running around and great-grandchildren running around, just causing terror through my grandparents' house, through the backyard. They lived 1 block away from the river, away from John Hole's Bridge. And at that time, the 4th of July, everybody was at my grandparents' house. We had perfect seat for the fireworks, perfect. We would break out the barbecue grills, and that neighborhood and that block became ours.
So you've always been surrounded by strong support.
Very godly support. Very godly, strong support. And that side of my family is LDS. They are very, very strong LDS, very devout LDS, and the morals and lifestyles and beliefs and family dynamic that they always tried to help me with went to the wayside as I was growing up. And they never faltered. They never turned their backs on me, even when I was in the most trouble in my life. My family was always there to support me with God and love and, honesty. Even if it was them saying, "We will not come and see you. We will don't show up to the family functions," even though I did. It didn't matter. They were always there. With open, loving arms, no matter what. So my childhood was actually Very good,
That's good.
very active in sports, wrestling, boxing, baseball,
Mm.
anything to keep me active so I wasn't bored, because that's when the problems would start, is when that boredom
You get
set in.
bored. Yeah. And so, seeing that, or hearing um, about your childhood and this medical crisis that you experienced, and then coming out the other end of it, um, how has those experiences shaped who you are today? And what are your core values now after experiencing the things that you experienced growing up, having this tremendous, which I can hardly believe, this situation with your heart and needing a heart transplant. I mean, we'll get back to this also in our interview. But what is your core values today? How are you able? Because somebody could be watching right now on the verge of jumping off a bridge or committing suicide. We know suicide rate is very high here among our young people in depression. How have you been able to overcome or to keep moving? What makes you unstoppable?
A smile. Life can be as simple as a smile. We can change the outlook of somebody's life, even for just a moment, with just a simple smile, um, or a simple handshake. Uh, how are you doing?
Which is very important.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful. That simple act of love can literally, knowing from experience and going through it and feeling the most hopeless that I've ever felt. It was an individual in the hospital down in IMC, um, that really helped me understand that smile and that selflessness. He was a total mechanical heart, and was not able to leave the hospital and waiting for a heart transplant. My family would come to visit me, and then they would leave, and he would notice this. He was very, very perceptive of everybody on the floor, every patient, every doctor, every nurse, just very involved, um, godly by nature. Uh, and he would notice when my family would leave, I wouldn't come out of my room. I wouldn't walk laps around the floor there, and I wouldn't get my exercise. And one day, my family had left. It was 3 weeks after my first open heart surgery. My family had come to see me, my wife, my kids, her sister, her brother. They had all come to see me. And the day before, it was my brother and some two very, very close friends of ours. They had come to see me. And I was just feeling very, very hopeless, just in complete despair, because there goes my family again. I'm stuck in the hospital. I can't leave. Woe is me. Just feeling very, very pity. Just a lot of self-pity. And he showed up in my doorway and smiled and said, "My name is Brent. Can we walk the halls together?" Uh, and I kind of grumbled, and he said, "No, you need to get out of your room. Come and walk with me." And it was that very simple interaction that literally changed my life. Uh, God had placed that angel in my life for a very, very specific reason.
And not only you need to come out of your room, but you also needed to come out of this
Whole.
rut, this hole, this dark place that you were in. So here comes this angel come to
Yes.
say, you know what, let's go.
Yes.
Come out of this room, come out of this hole, come out of this sense of hopelessness.
And it all started with a smile and, "Hello, my name is Brent." And it snowballed from there. That one simple act made me understand a little bit more of what it meant in life to be selfless. And from there, I followed suit, I guess you could say. And I would go the same exact thing that he did for me, I would do for other patients, or him and I together would do for other patients.
Paid it forward.
We would walk the hall there on the 4th floor at IMC in the cardiac wing, and we would notice patients that didn't get visitors. They didn't get that hope. They didn't get that support. And we would stop in their rooms and see if they needed anything, if they wanted to talk, if they wanted to walk with us. And it grew to the point that the doctors and nurses on that floor told us that we couldn't walk the halls anymore, and they were going to give us the conference room to meet in once a week. They studied this. They followed what we were doing, and they studied it. They watched the improvement of patients' health overall, mentally and physically, improve tenfold. And they allowed us to start a group called the Zipper Club. Patients just like us, people just like us, coming into advanced therapy heart treatments, heart failure, LVAD, transplants, or destination therapy, and their lives improved. And they would go to a patient and they would see somebody, and that simple smile and, hello, this is who we are. How can we help? And man, if that's not a success story in how all of those individuals changed the lives of so many other people, and then so on, those individuals changed the lives of so many other people, and not just patients, but their caregivers, their loved ones, their families. Boy, I don't know what is. That to me is a direct reflection of what God wants us to be, what we should truly be as humans.
Now, and speaking of your transplant, were you introduced to the families that were involved in this whole process?
So they have safety reasons set up for patients and for donor families. And my donor family opted not to really be involved. I don't even want to pretend to understand what they went through in making that decision. I know what I was going through and what my family were going through on my side. I cannot even understand or begin to imagine what they had to go through to say, okay, yes, our loved one is going to give life to so many other people. What was their process in understanding that? And that is something that has taken me a few years to not try and understand.
So you had one family who gave this miracle, then you had another family who received this miracle. So I think that's what it's all about, right? When it comes to miracles and paying it forward. When one person helps you, our goal should be to go out and continue this spreading this love towards others based upon what we received ourselves.
We don't receive those miracles or understand those miracles until we've went through the pain and the opposition to really find that on the other end. That's the unfortunate part about it. We don't just wake up one morning and, bam, we're slapped with a lottery winning. We go through the pain and the opposition in life and endure those unfortunate events before we see, the miracle. And before we get to share that miracle with others, we have to accept it. And it took me a little bit to accept it. survivor's remorse, survivor's guilt is what it's called. What we were told that it, and it makes sense. Why did that individual have to lose their life for me to continue mine? That, the fairness, finding the balance in that. I don't even want to say fairness because that's the wrong way to put it. Finding the balance in that was very difficult.
And I know, and so one of my favorite poet is Mark Nepo, and he wrote the Book of Awakening. And I grabbed this. I was looking at this last night, just thinking about our conversation, this heart-to-heart conversation, and the message that we want to relay to all of those who watch this videos, whether it's here or New York or wherever this video will go. But one thing, he suffered. He was a cancer survivor twice. And one thing that he said, and I'm just going to read it from his book. This is Mark Nepo, Book of Awakening, page 100. He said, "To be broken is no reason to see all things as broken." What do you think he meant by that? As relates to your life and your experiences.
So I was definitely a broken man for quite a while. I was definitely a broken individual, and especially at that point in my life when I didn't even know at times if I was going to wake up. I remember very specifically one moment. There was a time. It was it was Father's Day of 2016. And it was actually the day before Father's Day of 2016. I was sitting in this apartment that the hospital provided for advanced therapies patients such as myself, right next to the hospital. And I was very, very lonely, feeling very, very sorry for myself because I was in Salt Lake in a strange environment, away from my family, away from my loved ones, away from my kids, and it was coming up on Father's Day. And my oldest sister, Camille, brought my kids down to me to see me for Father's Day. And as my kids went to sleep in this little apartment with me, one on the couch, there was an extra bed in the room, and I had two on the bed in that extra bed there. And I was laying hooked up to these wires running into me, plugged into the wall. At night I had to unhook from the battery packs and plug into the wall to keep that pump functioning, to keep that drive line going. And I remember laying there thinking, it can't get any worse than this. What if I don't wake up? My children are here with me. What if I don't wake up? And I was so full of fear and doubt and self-pity at that time, and so broken that I was viewing everything else around me as broken except my kids. The system, the medical system being broken, how they wouldn't allow me to move home being broken. Everything in my life up here being broken because my family had to carry on and try and pick up the pieces of life here. And my wife trying to raise children on her own while I was down in Salt Lake, literally waiting to die or waiting to live, however anybody wants to look at it. I was doing my best to try and choose the waiting to live portion, but times it wasn't like that. I was very, very broken. So what I see and what he's saying there is, just because I've had damaged parts in my life doesn't mean all life is damaged. There is beauty in a smile. It can change with a smile. Not everything is broken. A bird flying by on a summer day when you're sitting in a park quietly by yourself, the sound of those wings and the beautiful sound of that bird flying by can breathe hope. Something so simple as that can unbreak the broken.
And it's so hard to not allow the things that you're experiencing at the present moment to not affect the things that you see around you, to not There's so many people out there that, maybe they're dealing with anger issues or, whatever the problem is. And the tendency is to react or to respond. And now everything around you or this person becomes this punching bag. But what you're saying is that we can go through the darkest moments in our life and still see light in everything around us. That because I am experiencing this brokenness, it's no reason to see you or anyone else in that way. And that's amazing to me.
It is predetermined. We have already pre-planned that in our life by carrying this anger and this guilt and this hurt and this frustration and this broken mentality. We have already pre-planned our future, whether it be the next day or the next week, of how we are going to react to things if they arise.
Right.
We catastrophize everything in that moment. At least for myself, I did. I was very good at catastrophizing. Well, because I'm going through this, if this happens, then this is how I'm going to react, X, Y, Z. And I don't want to speak for everybody because maybe some people don't do that.
Right.
Maybe some people do. And it's a very hard cycle to break. It's very difficult to get out of that. That's where the selflessness and the humility and the honesty come in. And it has to be pure humility and pure honesty. It can't be, I'm only going to be honest for this, but I'm going to hang on to the rest of this baggage. It has to be 100% all or nothing. We cannot expect certain locks to be unlocked if we're using a broken key.
That's a good point.
We cannot expect great things to happen if we are hanging on to unhealthy and disastrous parts of our lives.
Yes.
For some of us, we can, pick up the tools and move on with those tools and
Yes.
and begin to make our lives better. And for some people, that just, unfortunately, that just it doesn't work out for them. As we know, they don't have that capacity to be able to move on from certain things. And it does affect every part of their life, every aspect of their present life and their future life. And it's unfortunate. And I was one of those individuals for the longest time. Because my parents got divorced at a young age, I was 10 years old, that I was going to carry this anger and this hate and this guilt and this frustration. And I was going to share that part with other individuals in my life. And I was going to, whether they wanted it or not, they were getting it kind of attitude. And it shaped my life as a teenager and as a young adult very unhealthily. I've lived very unhealthy, sought that unhealthy attention from individuals and from the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol, and being in state raised in a juvenile correction center for my teenage life, and then shortly after being released, being state raised in an adult correction center because of those choices that I'd made during that time of my life.
So it's important that we all, and maybe not in the connotation of what you experience, but listening to you, it's important that we all experience this transplant from something that hasn't worked to something that's new, to have this new way of life and this new way of thinking. But for you, it took perhaps going through the darkest moment of your life to experience this light. And so
several of those darkest moments, and I come from the school of hard knocks. I learned everything the hard way. My grandfather told me once a saying, and a smart man learns from his own mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And
That's true.
I was neither a smart man or a wise man for the longest time. I did not learn from my mistakes, or I did learn, but think that I could do things better and differently, and I would get a different result, and it never happened that way. So it took me a long time to really understand what that saying meant, and I hope that I can, share some of my life and some of my story with others, and they can have a moment of that wise man and not have to go through the things that I went through, whether it was, battling the addictions and that lifestyle, that unhealthy lifestyle, and battling the anger and the resentment issues and the self-loathing problems and the depression, to, maybe me sharing parts of that and parts of how I made it through. As unfortunate as it may have been, me having to go through that, please don't be sorry for that, and don't feel bad for me for that, because they're blessings. They are blessings for me to share with you. Please don't go through what I went through. Don't take it as far as I had to. If we need to sit down and have a cup of coffee, if you need a ride to go get something from the store, to go get something to eat, to go to an alcoholics meeting, or to go to church, or to go to a doctor's appointment, please let me help you with that. Don't feel like you're alone in any aspect of life, because you're not.
And so growing up in the family that you grew up in, and going through the medical crisis, and having all of these individuals around you to support, who do you most admire and why?
I can't choose just one person that I most admire, because I got something different from every individual, whether it was a doctor or my wife or my father or my lifelong friends. I got a little piece of something from each of them: a family member, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, and at different moments, they were all heroes for a very specific time. They were those angels that God had placed in my life for that very specific moment, for a very specific reason, whether it was for a short time or for a long period. I can't choose just one. There's no way. I led for a long time, and it's very common for individuals to think, we're not going to learn something from somebody younger than us. We've already been through life, and we're not going to get that from somebody younger than us. And a very, very, very close friend of mine down in Salt Lake, he's quite a bit younger than me, and he has taught me so much about humility. I remember going into a place, and I had my batteries on and my drive pack, and they didn't understand what it was, and they were looking at me very strangely, and I was feeling very odd and out of place. And this individual came up to me, and at the time I think he was 17 years old, and I was 35 years old. I was 35 years old. And I remember him coming up to me, and he was 17 years old, and he gave me that handshake and said, "Hi, this is my name. How are you today?"
And that was very impactful for you.
It very, very impactful. It got me out of that fear state. And he became a hero to me at that very moment during that time of day. It was just everybody that I came into contact with.
Awesome. For the sake of time, we can go on and on in this conversation, and once again, we thank you for being here. Briefly, we do have, you have started a foundation.
I have.
La Heart Foundation?
Yep, the Idaho Heart Foundation.
Yeah, can you briefly talk about that?
So I came home. I was able to move back to Idaho Falls in 2017, a year after my transplant. And actually, my cardiologist, Dr. Blake Wachter, and Chief Eric Day of the Idaho Falls EMTs had started this idea of the Idaho Heart Foundation to provide AEDs and education and awareness, cardiac awareness, heart disease awareness to the community.
Okay.
And we had started a large group down in Salt Lake called the Zipper Club. It was a large support group where patients took care of patients, caregivers took care of caregivers, and we all took care of one another because nobody understood it like we did. The doctors have all the knowledge in the world, and they have great knowledge, but nobody understands it quite like we do. So we started a support group. When I moved home, that was missing. So with Chief Day and Dr. Wachter, we formed the Idaho Heart Foundation and then the support group for the foundation called Heart to Heart Support Group. As we're doing here, having this heart to heart. And that's what it was about.
And this is an event that you have. It became a gala or a banquet.
So we do have an event. Through the years, we have gone through the years of setting up small events, small pop-up events, CPR training. We do free CPR training and AED use, education use to the public at the fair, the farmers market, movie in the park, at schools, church events, scouting events, just because that public awareness is and that education is pivotal in saving a life. We started small, just one or two AEDs to our first responders, the police officers in the area, and have grown to have this gala event in February where we went from just 10 of us doing this to now we've got a very large group that helps. We all put this together, and we have an event with 450 plus people and businesses around the area and in the communities. I've been to the
first one.
Yeah,
it's great.
In Idaho Falls and surrounding areas for the first responders to get them the life-saving equipment that they need, the AEDs, the Lucas devices, the CPR training mannequins, so they can continue to train and certify individuals in their communities and provide this life-saving support in their communities where it wasn't there before. And then continue to spread the awareness and the education for families and individuals that are going through a cardiac crisis, such as heart failure or heart disease. We can provide them with some education and some lifestyle changes. Like the biggest one for me was diet. Diet change. When you're on a cardiac diet, man, the cardiac diet plan that they lay out for you in the hospital is cardboard sprinkled with worse cardboard. Just terrible. So I had a lot of time to develop some recipes and comfort foods that I could not live without, that are low sodium, high fiber, high protein, low carbohydrate, heart-friendly recipes that still tasted amazing.
And is this a cookbook that's coming out soon?
Yes, I would like this
That'd be awesome.
to be a cookbook. And we are still planning this, and we are still talking about this. And I want it to be free to the patients. I don't want anything to come of this. I want them to be able to sit down and meet with their cardiologists and get this cookbook and lifestyle change stories of myself and other patients to help them, to give them that little bit of free hope.
That's awesome.
And boy, hopefully they can carry on to the next moment of their life, the next day of their life, and still feel a little bit better. And others in the community can carry on with, well, we attended an event that the Idaho Heart Foundation put on at Movie in the Park, and we learned how to do CPR. We learned AED usage. We learned a simple basic skill that we can use if we come across somebody in a public event, in a public space, and they're having a cardiac distress moment. We helped saved that life. We called 911. We started CPR because we learned how to do that. Somebody found an AED, and we learned how to use that AED until paramedics and first responders and police officers showed up and could start the advanced care and get that individual to the hospital, where they've got a 70% chance, just over 70% chance of survivability if somebody does life-saving support of CPR and AED use. Now, not in every case. I don't want to convey the message that, yes, this happens in every case and it will save every case, because that's not the truth. But that simple act of starting and not being afraid to show individuals and do this.
Well, Jake, I wanted to say thank you so much. I mean, we can continue this conversation on and on and on. It definitely, hopefully this video, this message will go out across the world, and letting people know that you're not alone, and that even in the midst of crisis, there is light in the darkest of places. But my last question, briefly, what brings you joy? This is a question that I'm asking everyone that's on Why Believe Conversation. What brings you joy?
So that's situational. It depends on the situation that I'm in, whether it's at work or at home with my kids, or at a gymnastics event with my youngest daughter, at a Heart Foundation event with my beautiful wife and daughters. I guess what brings me the most joy is being able to share these small moments in my life with my family and my loved ones, and it brings them joy. What brings me joy is seeing somebody in an opposition of life, and that they get that aha moment, that light bulb moment, and they get a smile on their face, and they figure out a way to step through that and make it through that opposition, and they find their success. That brings me the most joy, I think. And watching my kids learn new things and teach me new things every day brings me the most joy. Just being able to live and share that life and love and success with everybody else around me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jake, for this heart-to-heart conversation. And if you're out there, this is Why Believe Conversations. We're having these heart-to-heart conversations in the hopes that something is said or done that makes your life much better. Once again, this is the Idaho Falls Family YMCA, where we specialize in youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. See you soon.
God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.